Good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Menachem Creditor. It's my honor to serve as scholar in residence and rabbi for UJA Federation of New York. We bring you Torah and music, blessing, and community every weekday. We've been doing so since March 18th, 2020. Today it is Wednesday, July 22nd, 2026. What a gift to be present with all of you, to find each other from across the world, to know that when we show up, we will be there, to learn Torah, to say good morning. Adele, Claire, Penny, Susie, good to see you. Hi, Adele, Jonathan, and Kathleen. Penny thinks it's broadcast 1596. What a gift to be present with all of you today. Scott, Boker Tov, back to you. Hi, Barry. Nice to see you. Might see you later on Long Island. Not sure if you'll be at our beautiful moment at the Henry Kaufman campgrounds. Neil, nice to see you, my friend. Miss you. Carl and Deborah, Linda, and Dave. Katie, Katie or Caddy? I hope I'm getting it right. Either one, really happy to see you here. Good morning. Cecile and Patricia, Debbie, and Arlene, Minna, Boker Tov, friends. All right, let's take a breath. We're going to sing a bracha, learn some Torah. Here we go. So good morning, everyone. Hope that you're well. Today is many things, including Erev Tisha B'Av. Tonight begins the 9th day of the month of Av. And these are very, very complicated days for us to navigate within Jewish history and certainly within the current moment of our history. First, a little bit about the holiday for those who are unfamiliar. On the 9th day of the month of Av, we commemorate the destruction of both Jerusalem temples. And in fact, on this day, we place the memories of other tragedies, including the breaking of the first tablets of Moses, the bad report of the spies going into the land of Canaan to scout out the land. We believe, and this is all by mystical remembering, it's not historically what happened on this day. We have the expulsion from Spain of the Jews, the expulsion from England of the Jews, massacres and crusades. This is what this day represents. And I wanted to channel some teaching from my beloved friend, a mentor of mine, a colleague at the Academy for Jewish Religion, Dr. Ora Horn-Prauser. She says in a Tisha B'Av supplement that we created together last year for the day, she says that as she grew up, and I relate to this framing of it, Tisha B'Av was a little bit performative because we were sitting on the floor, as one does on Tisha B'Av, reciting the Book of Lamentations and mourning for Jerusalem, which is what the day is so much about. And yet, we were doing so in the context of a very alive Jerusalem, and so it felt like an act of historic memory. She said, but what has happened certainly since October 7th is the feeling that Tisha B'Av is pointing to a contemporary reality, and it is much less performative. And there's a sadness to saying that in the recognition that the world around us resembles the Book of Lamentations phrasing. She sat and there was no comforter. And this is about the city of Jerusalem personified. Her friends were not her friends, and she reached out and they were not there. The city sits alone. Echa yashva vadad. So Dr. Ora Horn-Prauser says that what makes this very complicated is that the text feels a little bit too relevant. We don't often say that about Torah, but when it's the book of Echa, the book of Lamentations, whose language is so exquisitely sad, if I could say it like that, we don't want it to be relatable. And yet, in some ways, it feels that way. Not every moment, but certainly after Meir Mamdani's language last night, an obsession with the demonization of an entire people and homeland. I don't want to get lost in the politics of it, but in the Echa framework, which is our framework for the day, to see those who are bent on our weakness and destruction, and to know that we have an ancient language for this, and that the sadness and isolation that leads to is a nightmare which we will never enter into again. And so I want to say a little bit about the observance of Tisha B'Av, and then work toward one more observation from the text. On Tisha B'Av, it's a fast day like Yom Kippur, but without the joy of Yom Kippur. Some of us might laugh when I say that, but Yom Kippur is a very happy day. It's our chance to start again. What a gorgeous opportunity to live more fully, to make good decisions, to be granted one more day, one more year. Tisha B'Av offers none of that. It's a fast day where you do not eat or drink. We don't use ointments. We don't bathe. We don't wear leather shoes. But there are additional restrictions which differentiate Tisha B'Av from Yom Kippur, including this one. We don't learn Torah. You're allowed to learn the sad parts of the Hebrew Bible, but we don't learn Torah. What a strange rule for a Jew. Here's a very strange one that goes along with that. We don't greet each other by saying, "How are you?" In Hebrew, "Ma shlomcha," what is your shalom? What is your peace? And why? Because that would be an act of restoration, an act of connection. And on Tisha B'Av, we sit alone. Again, our enemies wish that for us. I want to still be able to say our enemies wished that upon us. But we can see in the rhetoric, again, exemplified by the mayor of New York City, that demonization of the Jews and of Jewish national identity, of our community, is not a thing of the past. And so this is a day for recognizing the ancient truth that we face as a contemporary Jewish community. The demonization of someone is not, you need to hold yourself accountable for your excesses. You have made a mistake and must be held responsible. That's not demonization. Demonization is, you are illegitimate and I will make it my mission to delegitimize yourself, your place, who you represent, your home. To look at any group, and to say you are beyond redemption is to isolate them as inhuman. That's actually what Echa points to as having happened to us in the ancient world. And clearly, we're not the only people for whom that has been a truth. There are many people who have suffered alienation, marginalization, persecution, and it is incredibly complicated to compare pains, which is why we should never do that. We cannot understand from the outside the inner experience of another group, even if we often must hold them accountable for their own actions when they do not. That is a fair notion of justice. That's fair. But the delegitimization of their very identity is a dehumanization move. Eicha says this is the playbook for that. Starve them, isolate them, marginalize them, make them sit alone. Well, we will not sit alone. We don't sit alone. One of the most beautiful things, and when we learn together tomorrow, I won't focus on the beautiful things because, in fact, part of Tisha B'Av is not doing that. Part of Tisha B'Av is sitting on the ground and allowing in the grief. So we will broadcast tomorrow at 9. But it's not going to have a hopeful tone. I'll try my best to be authentic to the day and to find some parts of Tisha B'Av with which to exemplify the moment, guide us, and not condemn us to the perpetuation of that mode. For one day, we are told to feel this. But if you've ever been part of a Friday night davening, a prayer service in a Jewish community, one of the centerpieces, which is a mystical tradition that began in the 1560s, it's fairly recent in Jewish history, is the Lecha Dodi. And in Lecha Dodi, we have a phrase that speaks directly to the book of Eicha, the book of Lamentations. That phrase is Rav lach shevet be'emek habacha. Too long have you sat in the valley of tears. What a thing for us to consider. Again, quoting my beloved teacher, my friend, Dr. Ora Horn-Prauser, who's the CEO and academic dean of the Academy for Jewish Religion, she said, back when she was younger, and I say this about myself too, we felt like we were performing Tisha B'Av. In honor and in commemoration of our past, we stepped into that history. Because we were supposed to. But now, it feels like we are tasting the ancient language for the contemporary problem of growing anti-Semitism. Because the delegitimization of Israel is an attack on the global Jewish people. That line between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism is a very hazy line. In fact, for me at least, that line barely exists. But the larger point that I want to make, because again, I don't want to get lost in one moment of our politics to make this timeless point, is that we stand and sit and live and learn and love and build with our neighbors, Jewish and not, committed to a vision of the world that is the opposite of Eicha, the opposite of the Book of Lamentations. In fact, it is a pivot point in Jewish history. Eicha is written from the vantage point of powerlessness. The prophet Jeremiah, according to tradition, who witnesses the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, writes this book, pouring out his grief and channeling the divine sadness. One of the most important developments in Jewish history on a theological level, how we believe about God, and also on the human level, is to understand that that sadness is taken seriously. And it propelled our people to rethink our very place in the universe, the question of agency, how we write our own history. And the formulation of that in response to the failures of the emancipation, long history lesson here for another time, the result of that was what we now call Zionism, a political movement that is born of the ideals and lessons of Jewish history. And that political movement was the actualization of our return to Zion, our return home. On Tisha B'Av, again, which begins tonight and lasts until tomorrow night, we sit in commemoration of the posture that impelled us to change the way we experience history. It propelled the Jewish people to take on more agency when it comes to the writing of our own history. It doesn't leave God behind, but it shifts the bulk of responsibility into human hands. This is the teachings of Rabbi David Hartman of blessed memory and Rabbi Yitz Greenberg, who is an incredible living giant of Jewish thought, and countless others. I encourage us this Tisha B'Av to take seriously what the moment demands, which is sit in that grief for a moment. Not to wring our hands and not to isolate us beyond the day, because the goal of Tisha B'Av is to push us into it so that we push our way out of it. So tomorrow morning we'll learn again. I won't be singing the blessing because we don't sing. I'll say it. But we're not allowed to learn the classic parts of Torah, and so that's not what we will do. But I invite you to take seriously what the day demands. Sit in it for a moment. We read tonight the Book of Lamentations, often by the light of a candle or a little flashlight. It is, as Rosa just pointed out, similar to saying Kaddish. There is a time for that. And then that time, as complicated as ending that time can be, that time ends, and then we get up. So I want to offer a blessing before we sing Hatikva. We're going into what Rachel Goldberg Polin calls the floor of the Jewish calendar. We're going into a very sad day. But that is one day. One day where we ritualize the grief, and then we get up, and we are told that those who remember the destruction of Jerusalem will be part of a great rebuilding. So let us remember, let us take Tisha B'Av seriously, and let us not pretend that it is a story from back then that is relegated to the past. Wouldn't that be nice? It's not. It is something that is dangerously relevant today. But we have made the decision as a people, the beautiful, sacred decision, to claim ownership of our destiny and to write the next chapter of history so that it is not a return to the book of Eicha as the general descriptor. We have a day. We step into it, we experience it, we learn from it, and we build our world faster than anyone can destroy it. That's our mandate. That is certainly the work of UJA. It is the work of every person of conscience to build this world faster than anyone can destroy it. And so tomorrow is hard. Tisha B'Av is hard. Sitting alone, not learning Torah, not asking how someone is, going to synagogue and not saying hello, how are you? That's not what it is to be human. And we should feel how hard that pushes against all of our inclination, because that's not how the world should be. And we can do something about that. Let's remember that last part. We can do something about that. Isn't that great? Let's send our hearts to the east. Let's sing. Let's double down on being in the moment so we can make the next one much better. Kol hod baleva penima nefesh Yehudi homia ulfatei mizrach kadima ayin letzion צופיה עוד לא עבדה תקוותנו התקווה בת שנות 2000 להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון וירושלים להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון וירושלים. Am Yisrael Chai. See you tomorrow, my friends.